late. Gemma? All right, come get your prize. Okay. There are a couple of prizes that are still to be won for the rest of the night, so I urge you guys to listen carefully and answer them correct next time.
Okay, we're going to be moving into the next session. We're going to invite Bruce up onto the stage. He'll be facilitating our soccer player session.
Those of you who don't know Bruce, Bruce is the co-founder of Chaplaincy South Africa, and he's no stranger to the All-In Conference. Our next guest is Ian Taylor, who has recently been announced as the assistant manager / coach of Chippa United FC.
Cool, and then we'll also be joined by Roscoe Peterson, who's a professional soccer player and current defender at Chippa United.
And we'll hand over to Bruce for the session.
Okay, guys, we're going to behave. Footballers are a really difficult crowd, and you're going to get some idea of what I have to put up with working with soccer players. Coaches are the worst. Ian?
No comments on the photo.
Yeah, that's a bit moody, right? Like, what is going on there? Are you auditioning for James Bond or something? That's anyway. I've got to admit, having the opportunity to sit between you two, and we might explore this a little bit later if we've got a moment. But you've known Roscoe for a long time, and in some ways, I'm sitting here tonight because of the way God has used you. And in fact, I wouldn't be a sports chaplain right now in South Africa if God hadn't used you. And I wouldn't have got to know Roscoe, and hopefully you'll get just a little insight into how God has worked in his life in the last few years. God has worked mightily in your life and brought incredible change in your life, and that would not have been possible without the way God has used you in answer to prayer 7 or 8 years ago that led to me beginning this journey in South Africa. So I just want to acknowledge that this evening. But Ian, you've been coaching for a long time. You've had a lot of experience at youth level and in other parts of the world at senior level as well. But just give us one highlight of your coaching career so far.
Is it working?
Is it on?
Apparently it's on.
Thank you once again, especially Ian. Thanks for the invite. It's an absolute pleasure to share my journey along with Bruce and Roscoe. Just on Roscoe, I mean, before I answer that question, I knew Roscoe. I coached him when he was 17 years old. In my first coaching stint, extremely talented young player. And then already adversities, injuries, and Bruce will go into that. But we've gone full circle now. Roscoe's come back, and now I'm his coach again here at Chippa United. But just to see him at the age of 32 in the twilight of his career after all these challenges.
You told me you were 25.
With 7 years experience.
I'm extremely proud of you, Roscoe, just to see not only the comeback that you've made, but also the man you've become, the father you've become. And you're a real role model to the players currently now. We know the challenges we have, but I just thought I'd acknowledge that. But to answer your question, Bruce, I started coaching in 2013 at a club called Ajax Cape Town. It was life-changing for me. Ajax is very much invested in the youth. Their philosophy is world-renowned, and what I liked about that organization is that they really invested in youth, they believed in youth, and they had a very good idea in how to develop youth, not only from a football perspective, but also from a human aspect. And my highlight was starting there with the under 13s, working with a specific group of players that I was very privileged to just grow up with them, take them to each age group, and eventually 2015, MTN Cup final, Port Elizabeth. The first cup final with these bunch of players, I eventually took them up to the first team. I became the assistant coach in the first team at that point in time, and we won the MTN 8 Cup final with 10 players from the academy starting out of the starting 11. And that for me was a real significant moment for me, because I know that the calling on my life is youth, and to impact youth not only from a football perspective, but to see them reach their potential as humans and as men. And that was a real highlight for me. And to see players like Roscoe and all these guys go on to play for Bafana, it just reaffirms my why. So that's it, Bruce.
Yeah, and I remember being there that day with you. It was my second season as chaplain at Ajax Cape Town, and I think 8 of that squad had actually been tutored by you as youngsters, and I can only imagine, just how much gratification that would have given you. But of course, as you coach in the South African context, there are a lot of challenges. In fact, I met a coach from another sport the other day, and told him that I was a pastor who worked with high-performance athletes, but mainly with professional footballers. And he said, half jokingly, "So you work with high-performance athletes and South African footballers?" How do you respond to that as a coach? Because you're somebody grounded in your faith, that seeks excellence, that is passionate about seeing young people grow, particularly growing in their sporting talent. How do you respond to that? What are some of the challenges for you as a coach?
It's very difficult, Bruce, because you're working in organizations where there's a serious lack of vision. It's very short term. The game and professional sport has become about money. That's the reality. But I haven't been really good at it, to be honest, because I'm very passionate about football. I know the game. I think I've got a good knowledge about the game, and I always thought that football was the answer. I always thought that my knowledge in football was the answer to create better players. And working in these environments, because there's no real value systems in these organizations, players come in and the culture is not really good, and the environment is not really good, and you have certain standards and you have certain values, and if it's not coming from the organization, it's really, really difficult, and it's a daily challenge. And just recently, I worked in China for a while, and that was a real eye-opener. The whole communist way of doing things and the way they teach kids, for me, it was more child abuse. And it opened my eyes. And only now, recently, in the last 4 years, I realized that, it's actually not about football. You've got to take football off the table. It's about the person, it's about the individual. We need, in most sporting organizations, we need to understand that the player is the central focus of the organization, of a club, or whatever it is. And the only way it's going to work for us as coaches, is becoming harder and harder for pro players, because there's a lot of pressure. And I'm in a pressure environment. I struggled a lot with I'm judged on results. I'm judged on performances. And when you walk into environments where it's toxic and you've got to change the whole culture, you don't have time to do it. You've got to be really quick on your feet, and you've got to understand that you need to get results, but you also need to change the culture, you need to change the environment, and that's a long process. And you don't have time. So, you know, more and more I realize that it's, for me, it's about love. It's about loving the person, it's about caring for the person. And I can tell you now, as players, he's a player, and he can admit, when you show love and you care for a person, it doesn't matter what you know about the game, you're going to impact his life. And that for me has been it's been an eye-opener. And every day, Bruce, I've got to wake up and I've got to say, you know, I can't handle these situations. I don't have the strength to do it. And I've got to let go, and I've got to say less of me, but more of you. And it's an ongoing thing. It's challenging.
It's really interesting listening to, you know, the earlier discussion and the challenges in sports that aren't financed, where you have to finance yourself and the sacrifices you have to make. This is a sport in South Africa where there is some money, and yet there isn't a culture always of excellence. There's a culture immediately of you've got to get results today, cut corners, work with what you've got, and that can be very hard for particularly a Christian coach, I think, that desires to see God glorified, to see people valued, but also to see the talent that an individual has got properly nurtured. And you're not given the time, the resources, but more importantly, I think the backing to do that. And so, you know, Ian's been very honest, and I know that he's still trying to process, you know, what it means for him to live faithfully to Christ whilst living with those frustrations, living with what could be in the context of what is. And you know, pray for Ian as he tries to grow in that and to navigate that. But Roscoe, I asked Ian about highlights of his career. What about one highlight from your career so far? Notice I said so far.
So far, that's very good. I'm at my peak now. I'm reaching my peak actually at 32.
Why not?
Evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. My highlight was standing singing the national anthem. I got one call up for Bafana Bafana. After all I've been through with injuries, growing up, it was always my dream to represent my country. And I don't want to go give you all the detail, but before becoming a professional footballer, I suffered 3 knee injuries, like at the age of 16, 17, and 19. I broke through at the age of 23. At Chipper United, I started at the football club in 2010. I moved on to SuperSport, and that's when I thought, okay, in the big leagues now, it's all about me. Yeah, I am. And then suffered a horrific ACL injury. Sports people know that's like a big knee injury to have, and I was out of football for like a year, and then came back to play, bounced back, and I had another knee injury behind my kneecap, my patella. Then I thought, okay, was God trying to show me now? But through all that, obviously, the main thing was I tried to do everything by myself. Like Ian said, we also set high standards for myself and put all the pressure and responsibility on myself. And through that journey, I've come to understand, and obviously surrendering my life to Jesus, come to the point where I realized that the responsibility to make things happen is just not mine, it's God's. So all I have to do is display the fruits of the Spirit in everything that I do. Bible says honor God in all things that you do. And that's what I did. Came back from our 5th knee operation, same knee. It's been the same knee all the time. And since I've changed my perspective to that, by actually forgetting about my dream, because of all the things I've been through, my time at Ajax Cape Town is probably the best football I've played, and that's when I got the national team call-up, and yeah, it just came out of nowhere. if I can also paint a picture like Meg did. I was just at Ajax at the facility having breakfast. The coach came around and he was like, you have to pack your bags. The national team coach calling up, and I was like, in our football, like everything is a joke, really. So I didn't take him serious at all, and I was just laughing about it, and went back to the breakfast table, and he called me back again, and he said, "No, like I'm serious." And I was like, "Nah, it can't be." And I was like, "Yeah." The first thing I did, I went to the car, cried. Yeah, men do cry, guys. Cried, called my wife, and then I prayed, obviously, called my mom. Yeah, so that was the highlight of my career, was representing my country. Yeah.
You know, you mentioned the injuries, and, you know, to have 3 serious injuries by the age of 19, you know, that would have ended the journey, I think, for most people. And you've been honest enough to say that you relied a lot on yourself, but as you look back over those injuries, what are some of the things that you've learned that you feel that you could share with others who suffer serious injuries that might put their careers in sport at risk?
I think just to trust the process. It's going to happen. It's football. We all know why we're professional athletes. Like, these are the things that do happen. And like I said, I just changed my perspective on it all, you know. Only goodness from God, right? So getting the knee injury, something good must come from it. I went through it 3 times before pro, but honestly, like I said, what I struggled with was that I wanted to do it like on my own. So after the first knee injury, I was like, nah, I must get back. I want to prove. After the second knee injury, nah, I have to get back. I'm going to do this. And only after the third did I start thinking about God, like, honestly. Then I was like, nah, there's, you know. And then when I made it as a professional, when I got my first PSL contract, I thought, yo, this is my time. Like, this is my time. Not realizing what I've been through, and then just shifting back again to, it's all about me. I have to make this happen. This was my dream. I have to push for it. And then 6 months into my PSL contract, I got the ACL injury, which is like the biggest ligament in your knee to suffer. And then that's when I knew that God is like using my injuries for me to realize that the responsibility to achieve my dreams is not mine. All I have to do is surrender my life to Jesus, display the fruits of the Spirit in all that I do. No cutting corners. When you're going through your rehab, faithfulness is a fruit of the Spirit, if I'm correct. And part of faithfulness is when you're sitting after your knee operation, your rehab that you have to do. It's there for a reason. There's no cutting corners. When people say there's no cutting corners, there's literally no cutting corners. If I know I have a rehab program that I have to do and apply the fruits of the Spirit in doing that, honoring God in doing my rehab, being on time, I end up focusing on the fruits and on God and not on myself and what the outcome will be. So like I said, the main message that I can share with you guys that's going through tough times with injuries and things like that, is the responsibility to make things happen. It's not yours. I think as sports people, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. You know, we want to win, we focus on winning, and we focus on the outcome of things, where I come to understand that it's more about the effort and displaying the fruits of the Spirit in all that we do.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the fruit of the Spirit. Yeah. Like, I'm sitting next to two guys here who get, you know, angry. Yeah. I mean, I've seen you both. You know, it's fair to say a pressurized sport, a sport not only with pressure, but a sport where there's physical contact. A sport sometimes where your teammates don't always have the same level of professionalism or the same discipline as you. When you arrived at Ajax, you had a reputation, particularly Roscoe, for being a very disciplined player, hard-working player, but you also had a reputation of being Mr. Angry.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that. What sorts of things you used to react to and how, and the journey you've been on.
I don't think
In
I
recent
can
years.
share how, but yeah.
Well, I'm not asking you to share the absolute detail
Yeah.
of what you said and how you said it.
No, I think it's like Ian shared. As a professional athlete, you set your standards very high, and obviously playing soccer, it's a team sport, so there's many adversities and diversities in certain different individuals and things like that. So I used to try and control everything. That was the root of my anger issues. If my teammate's not doing something, I would want to, have a go at him. And so basically, I used to focus on controlling the uncontrollable. And that's where most of my anger stemmed from. So we lose a game, you made the mistake, that was me. I'll be on your neck, vulgar words, whatever, have a go at you. And yeah, I just tried to control the uncontrollables, and I think that was the stem of my anger. And obviously, surrendering my life to Jesus and having the Kola prayer book has obviously helped me shift my perspective and focus on, I think on page 42 in the call-up is the prayer for attitude and character, which speaks about Jesus and how he is our leader and our captain. So that's how I should act in team sport, and rather lead by action than trying to control all the uncontrollables and just focus on the effort and instead of the outcome. Yeah.
And from what you've told me, but not only what you've told me, many other people have told me, there's always been a leader in there, but you've often not been trusted to be a leader because of the way you respond to other people. But is that changing, Ian?
Yeah, Roscoe's, for me, he's sort of driving the culture at the club at the moment, which I like to do in terms as a coach, you need custodians of the culture in the team. And to be honest, he's probably the only one who's really equipped to do it. And he's been challenged every day because the culture is not as good as we think it is. And he comes under fire every day. And I just try and encourage him to keep going, and because sometimes you don't have to say anything. It's what you do. And that for me is the best example. And I'm just happy to have someone like that in the team.
Yeah, I think also, like, if I can just add on to that, like what Coach Ian just said, sometimes you don't have to say anything, and that was my biggest challenge, like
Keep it simple.
keeping quiet and keeping it simple. Yeah, always overcomplicating things. Basically, just keeping quiet and leading by action, like you said. Obviously, in a team sport, it's more challenging because obviously there's more players. You have your teammates, and you have, obviously, it's not an individualistic sport. So there are challenges daily that you face, and yeah, I just wanted to add on to that point of what Ian said, that I used to be the guy I am still the guy with the loudest mouth, probably, but at the right times. Yeah.
So the inner work of the Spirit is enabling you to respond to things that frustrate you in a much healthier way and respond to others much healthily than you did in the past.
Yes, like full transformation of the heart. If I can just speak of a recent event, we lost last game 1-0 against Cape Town City, and we conceded a goal like in the 89th minute, which is from a set piece, which is just basically lack of concentration. And the same scenario 10 years ago or 5 years ago, the player was responsible for that area, would have probably, I would have probably ruffled him up in the dressing room after the game or something, but
I wish you did.
but that's not the Jesus way. So, went to the player after the game, spoke to him about it, and literally after the game, went to him and obviously spoke about it to him instead of advertising it. I just engaged with him one-on-one and obviously spoke from the heart. And actually, later that evening, the same player messaged me to be thank you for that, and then he took responsibility for it. So before, I would want the player to take responsibility for it, but the way I would go about it was wrong, because I was focused on the outcome of it all. So being more focused on my efforts, on displaying the fruits to that player, I actually received the outcome that I would have wanted. So that's why I say again, be focused on the effort rather than the outcome. It could have gone very sour a few years ago. Yeah.
One final question, and I've got a vested interest in asking this question. But why do you think you need sports chaplains in your world?
If I look at the sport, specifically football in South Africa, and just the players and where they come from and the different cultures, and the need. I mean, Bruce mentioned, there was a need already back when I contacted you 9 years ago, and that was at youth level, because seeing where the players come from, the circumstances, the challenges they have, the fatherlessness that we all know that's out there, there's a dire need for a support system. And I feel sports chaplaincy is the perfect support system for the player. And I think Bruce is doing a fantastic job, because it's not just about the Christian faith. You have a lot of Muslims there, and that, even the support that you show for them, is admirable. But also guys like Roscoe and a few of the PSL guys that you're mentoring at the moment in their faith. And I think that, that makes the real difference. And having leaders like Roscoe around in the change room, and just having a different value system.
I think it's all about mentorship. I think that is what's lacking. Speak about having good role models out there for the next generation to come through. So having a sports chaplain around for me has obviously helped me with my trying to control the uncontrollable issues. Also, there's a sense of, for me, mentally, there's a sense of accountability having a sports chaplain around. And I just think it's all about mentorship. And we, like Coach Jen has said, there's different cultures, there's lots of diversities, and having a sports chaplain there just helps bringing all those things, because there's obviously also there's certain things that I wouldn't speak to my coach about, but having a sports chaplain there, I can share things with him, and that just takes the load off. And to perform, to have a peak performance, you have to be free, so not to have all that burden on you with certain issues that you're having. But I think mainly it's the mentorship and the implementing of values and principles. My Coach Jen and myself, we talk about it all the time. I don't know, I can't speak for other sports, but in football, there's just nothing is implemented from a moral perspective. There's no values, there's no coming down from the organization. So having a sports chaplain there, you can kind of try and start having that culture, being the father figure or the mentor figure there for players who struggle with issues that's off the field and that's bothering them on the field. I think that helps a lot.
Great. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and all the best for your game on Sunday against Maritzburg. God bless you both. Thank you.
Thank you.